of officers. We do only have 3. We can do this 2 ways. We can just table it till next time if that's your consensus. We could nominate somebody, but we'd be only voting for 3 people.
Nominate everyone who's not here.
Well, I did talk to Steve, and he, if nominated, he would accept.
Good.
But I don't know if you want, I have mixed feelings about 3 people voting on the officers.
I'm happy to table it until
Okay,
everyone's together.
then since it's a table, I have a motion to table that.
Motion to
Alright.
table it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I say aye as well. So we'll discuss that in August, and that's probably the best to do. Approval of the minutes of May 20th. They have been distributed. Does anyone have any comments, additions, corrections, or objections?
No.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. Those minutes are approved. We have a release of an ACO of it's a small print, my friend. Some of us,
Still too small.
209 Nantucket Road.
Okay. Yes, so it's the same thing. It's the compliant permit was done by Nantucket surveyors. We had to release the ACO so that they can start funding it.
Any questions from the
Wait a
board?
minute, which one is this?
This one is
This-
number 5. The
Henrietta Day?
no,
No,
this is the
this is
Atkins.
Atkins.
Okay, all right. I'm good.
So a motion to release? Is that
Second.
what you mean?
Motion's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. And by the way, it's nice to see you all live
So
Yeah.
in
Isn't
not
it?
little
Likewise.
boxes. Loan for day, 55R Pulpus Road, septic to sewer.
So we accidentally skipped the loan for Winehold, 11R South Shore. That was number 6.
Mhm.
Did I miss one?
Yeah,
Yes, number
Is-
6.
Yes, okay, let's go back to
that's for Winehold.
Winehold.
Mhm.
Same thing. It's the release of a loan. Everything was done. There are still some funding encumbered, so we just need the vote to release it so that we can get that money liquidated again.
Motion to release the loan for Winehold?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye, that release is approved. Now we're at the loan.
Yes, loan for day.
This is the one.
Yes, and I believe, to my knowledge, it's a septic to sewer connection for 55R Pulpus Road. But I think you had some comments on it before we.
I just have one question. On one page, it says it's $27,000 and the next page it says it's $32,000.
Oh, it was intended to do the 32. We always go a little bit higher.
Okay,
Just, and then if not all of it is used, we release the loan like we just
okay,
did.
fine.
Any other comments?
I make a motion to accept.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. Loan is approved. Upgrade,
The local upgrade approval.
this is 64 Quinnet Road.
94.
94.
Yeah, we have to.
I have to get my eyes fixed sometime this summer.
I was just talking to Jessica Gage.
You know, at
this morning.
74, you get little things in them.
Hey, you're still young.
Yeah, all right.
So
Nah.
94 Quidnet, I think is somebody, Dan, you're here. We only have the one microphone now, so I think you're on that side now. I don't know why this microphone's missing. That's what's going on. Okay, thank you. For the public, one of the microphones not working. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Terry.
Good evening, Dan Malloy, Site Design Engineering for the applicant. So it's 94 Quidnet Road, looking to a septic upgrade under maximum feasible compliance. There really is no other place we can put this system due to the existing buildings, wetland setbacks, and then also well setbacks. So we're asking for waivers for dimensional relief from the property line and from a slab foundation. Remember if that's it. And over 3 feet of cover over the septic system. Essentially, it's a best fit. We're not looking to expand this system. It's the existing bedroom count. The 3 foot of cover requirement is due to the slope of the property. It's a very steep slope from the house down to the street. we have to put the system in that slope. Other than that, it's straightforward septic repair with the IA component.
Questions from the board?
Okay, Martel.
So like Dan said, this is maximum feasible compliance. It's an existing structure. They're getting the best possible situation that they can get. So staff would be recommending granting the local upgrade approval for the setbacks to the property sidelines. And I believe Dan, it's also innovative alternative. So pretty much we can't do any better than this.
That seems to have been our standard consistently. if-
Correct.
When there's no alternative. Other comments? Do I hear a motion to approve the waiver?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. The waiver is approved. Variance request for 1A,
1A Street, yep.
1A.
Variance request for, I think it's also Dan. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon again, Dan Malloy, Site Design Engineering, 1A Street, Nantucket. Again, it's a maximum feasible compliance septic upgrade. We have wells all over the place in the area, very small lots. Everybody's familiar with Nantucket. So we're doing an IA septic system upgrade. Again, no additional bedrooms, existing bedroom count flow. I did just learn that the property is going to connect to town water as well. There was one of the variance requests that was in here was to do with a within 100 feet or 150 feet of their well. That's now going away.
That's a
because-
mute point.
Right, so we're connecting to town water, so that's gone. But we are still looking for dimensional relief to setbacks to property lines.
Art,
Yeah, so where they're connecting to town water, where they have access to it, that's what we would prefer in this case. And he's looking for relief from the local Nantucket regulations that require 50-foot setbacks for sidelines and everything like. So this is, again, maximum feasible compliance, and this one works. It changed a little bit. At one point, they weren't going to connect. It wasn't that they weren't connecting town water. That wasn't part of their proposal. Since our discussion, when the variance came forward, they've since made connecting town water part of what they're going to do, and they're going to get us a revised plan. So staff would recommend approving this. Is once again best situation that we can get, furthest distance from wells, septics, the harbor, and everything else. And once again, it will be an innovative alternative.
good. Comments?
No.
Good.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor of the motion to approve?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. Variance is approved.
Thank you.
Variance for connection to town water,
Town sewer.
town sewer, Glidden.
Yes,
Rugged
so
Road.
this is a variance for the town sewer connection on 24 Rugged Road. That part of the regulation 69 that we require, and it's for a property line setback for how long not a setback, but how far the run is. And I think Ms. Glidden is here for representing herself.
Sorry, I gave you my only printed out copy of the request. I'm asking for a variance. You gave Peter Meerbergen a variance, who's my next door neighbor. We are part of a 10-acre piece that was cut into 4 2.5-acre points. So I'm just kind of a similar situation to Peter. The first reason I want the variance is because the lot size makes it impractical. The lot is narrow and goes very far back. And you can see there, I have a quote from, sorry,
Take your time.
Mhm.
from a company that's going to be 75,000 just to tie in the front house, not even the back house. So the expense is tremendous because of the shape of the lot. It's not a house next to the street. You have to go back. And I have concerns about the spaghetti lines being that long. Secondly, my water is actually like 6 times better than the town's. I have really, really good water. I have friends in town who come out to fill their jugs from my water. So the water quality is exceptional, even with the in-ground septic systems there. My nitrate is 0.13 and the town's is 0.75 to 1.24. So I have excellent water quality in spite of my chickens. And the crux of the matter is it's unjust because the reason Peter and Irene Schreiber and I were asked to tie in was because we're next to a 40B. And that's a very intense development in a rural area. So I have plenty of land for my system. So there's no actual reason to have to tie into town septic because the system has been functioning for the past, well, I think it went in 1999. So the system is functioning fine and there's no problems with it and there's plenty of room for it. Peter was allowed this under 4 conditions, to which I would also agree, that it's larger than 10,000 square feet per bedroom. My lot size is, it's over 100,000 feet. It's 2.5 acres. If we did at some point put in a tertiary dwelling, that would tie into town sewer as per regulation. That's because I kind of like the whole giving people a place to live. You know, if you possibly can get another dwelling in that's just under the, oh, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, I'd like to be able, if possible, that very front piece, if a covenant house could happen, I would be willing to do that because it's right next to the sewer. And that we wouldn't subdivide the property. I mean, there's the property behind us subdivided into 5 lots and 3 of them are short-term rentals. They've got swimming pools and it's a nightmare to me because it's a beautiful part of the island. It goes down into the state forest. And I really do hate to see it getting wrecked. Okay, sorry, I'm so nervous. Okay, that's what I have to say.
Thank
Any
you.
Thank you.
questions?
Your comments are.
So just to refresh, regulation 69 requires if you have sewer in front of your property, you got to connect. And I think you all recall, because it was recently, I believe Mr. Merbergen was in, and he was granted, relief from the requirement because he was like, I think almost 600 feet back for the run on that back house. When you look at this property, oh, let me finish. It's about 600 feet to the back house, as she's saying. The front house is less than 200 feet to the road and sewer. So I think, a compromise would be to require the front house to connect and give relief to the back house. Because, trying to be consistent with this board and making decisions going forward, where do you draw the line? I think we've been pretty clear around 500 to 600 feet, we're giving relief. I don't, there's plenty of places that are 200 or less that have all connected. So it just giving relief to that front house, I think is going to cause us some problems going forward. I don't know what the standard is then. So, and again, they're in the wellhead protection district. We do have a loan program that would help pay for this. I do know, I believe she submitted some septic inspections that said they were working fine and working condition. That was all part of your packet, but the front house, I think, should connect.
So the back, you're recommending the back house be essentially exempt of the front house, and that's 200 feet,
Less than,
less than 200 feet.
You don't have this?
I do, not with me, but I looked at it.
You have it?
I tend to agree with him because I would give her the variance for the back house, but if the front house is, do you know exactly what it is? I'll tell 200.
well, I just did the measurement on, not that GIS is 100%, but it's pretty darn good. And connecting from the sewer line to the sewer in the road would be less than 200 feet, in the 190s, something like that.
Right, if you give it the
So-
variance for that.
And again, we
then-
do have the loan program that we would be more than happy to loan them the money on to make that connection.
If you give it the variance for the one, for that 200 feet, then everyone that comes up that only has one house that's 200 feet back would be looking for the same variance. So I agree, we should give it the variance for the back lot. For the
Back
600-foot
house.
lot, and then make a tie into sewer to the front lot.
May I say, if we're gonna tie the front house in, I mean, we're gonna have to tie both houses. There's no way you guys are gonna give me the variance and then in 5 years you're not gonna tie it. I think all properties are gonna wind up having less time.
No, I think this board will grant the variant. Well, I don't know what the board will do. The board will do what they'll do, but if they do grant the variance to the back house, the only time you would have to connect would be on failure, new construction, subdivision,
Yeah, any
anything
of
along
those.
those lines. It would be in writing, it would run, would run with the property.
Right, the variance would be essentially forever unless one of those conditions happened.
And that would be the same for the front house that Peter got. So Peter and I are next to each other neighbors. We are way far away from the water table. We are way far away from the company state forest. We're not in the watershed for the
Speak to the
harbor, outside harbor watershed.
Yeah.
So I feel the only reason that we're being asked to tie in is because of the intense development that came in next to us with the H2B. Like, we're kind of, this is happening all over the island. Rural people are being asked to tie into city regulations, but our septic system is fine. It's actually better than the town water. So from my point of view, I'm being asked to tie in because Josh Posner made a killing. If he wasn't
Well,
there,
that's
the line
not,
would
that's
not be
not an
there.
appropriate comment. You're asked to
I
tie in.
apologize. I'm sorry. I'm very emotional.
I understand.
I have cancer. The chemo makes me unstable, and I'm sorry.
I understand.
It's in my liver, it's in my heart, it's in my lungs. I just like not to have to deal with this in the time I have left. Thank you.
Melissa,
I'm not familiar, and I've not been on the board long enough to approve too many of these. But is there any precedent where you don't require the front house to tie in because it's all one property, it's one property owner, and regardless of the length of the distance?
I don't think we've run into anything with there's two properties. I can tell you, we've had several up on Old South Road,
Yeah.
which were right around 600 feet, 600 feet. The board granted
Yeah,
to about 3 or 4 there. So, the other thing with Merbergen was his second dwelling was over 350 feet from the sewer line. The closest dwelling was around 350.
mhm,
The furthest dwelling was around 600.
okay,
So
Okay.
he did get granted both of those. In this case, just, it's a little closer, less than 200 feet. Again, the wellhead protection. And this is not something, this regulation 69 isn't something that has just been sort of, hey, you have to connect, hey, I mean, everybody's been required to connect. It has nothing to do with any developments around them or anything like that. I mean, this is the wellhead protection district. This is the area that contributes to our wells that provide town water to the entire town. It's a nitrogen sensitive area, just like our harbor watersheds and pond watersheds. So anyway.
If I may,
please.
I'm not in the harbor watershed.
It's not hard.
I don't know how to, okay, if you're going down Rugged Road, sorry, I've lived on Rugged Road since it was a dirt road and there was nothing there, okay? If you're going down Rugged Road on my side, it's the back end of Bayberry, there's a loop there. But all down the right side, there's lot after lot after lot going all the way down to Sturgis Pines down at the bottom. None of them are being required to tie in, and they are much closer to the wellhead. The reason I'm being asked to tie in is because I'm close to the dense development. Peter was not required to for the 2 dwellings on his property, I asked to not be required to, for the 2 on mine. My septic is fine. Our system is working well. It's a good system. There's 2.5 acres of land there. So I would just ask the mercy of the board to not require me to tie in. Thank you. I need all the requirements that Peter met.
Yes,
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering, on behalf of the applicant. We have inspected the systems. I apologize for being a couple of minutes late. I had another meeting run late, but as she stated, the systems are functioning and do meet current requirements. And it just seems fundamentally unjust that, not allow the same provisions of exactly next door if it's subject to all the same conditions as well. She's not asking for something different as long as, this is just a sort of a understanding that it's while she's on the property. And it seems both only fair, and in terms of it's not so much as about the harbor watershed, but the distinction, of course, as Mr. Crowley made, is that it's the wellhead protection district. But again, with the kind of separation distance that you have to groundwater and from essentially to single family dwellings, the loading rate, I can't imagine that there's going to be an adverse impact or effect on the overall town water supply for this limited amount of time to remain on-site systems. Thank you.
good.
May I ask a question? The Muirburg property that's being referenced on the, in our packet, there's a GIS map. Is that 20? Is he
Yeah.
to the left of you? Okay, thank you.
And we did grant a variance for that last meeting.
Well, my problem is there are other places that have their septic system isn't good working order, but if they do certain things, they're required to either tie it to the sewer or put an AI system in. And I think the problem is if it's 200 feet away and you give her a variance, the next person that has a house is 200 feet away will want the same variance. That's my problem with the whole thing. I will give her a variance. I will vote for her to get variance for the one that's 600 feet back. I will let her have that. But I think she should have to tie into the town sewer if it's only around 200 feet from the sewer.
The house is not 200 feet. If you look at the map. It will help them.
Art, could you explain again to me?
Which art?
Sorry, I wasn't sure which.
Yeah, which art? They're both arts.
One of the art squared, one of them.
I think
The difference between this and the variance we gave before.
difference between is distance between the structures. So their rear structures furthest from rugged road are about the same, 500-600 feet. Their second dwellings, 20 rugged road is looking like it was around over 350 feet from rugged road. And the second dwelling closest to rugged road for 24 rugged road is less than 200. So I just think that's the difficulty this board, is going to have to, I mean, I'd love to grant Mrs. Glidden the variance. I'd love to stand here and speak in favor of it. But, we have to look forward and the next people coming in and how we justify giving this relief. And so, if the board, can come up with something that's consistent, because I think it's important that we're consistent with everybody and fair, and everybody knows where they stand going forward for every property. So I think that's the difficulty.
Well, it's a difficult.
And I just took a quick measurement. Now, you got the house, you got the sewer line, and, they would tap into part of that sewer line that I'm assuming, and Mr. Gasparo I would defer to Mr. Gasparo on this. They would tap into that sewer line that goes to the septic tank somewhere and then put in a force main, a pump somewhere there. So it would be, that's where I'm getting my calculations using the measurement on GIS that it's under 200 feet. But maybe Art Gasparo has something he can add to that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. I mean, what we would do would be to put a pump chamber that is essentially to the south of the existing house to serve it and then run the force main from there. But I think the underlying issue, understanding precedent, every site being different, is that we have very similar circumstances to the exact site, to the site immediately adjacent, and understanding the back structures being, I suppose, weighted differently because they're further away. That I'm not sure if you have a map in front of you, but if you look on the GIS and the positioning of the structures that are on the adjacent parcel compared to this, it's almost like you have the Miss Glidden's southerly house close to the road, and then the two houses on Marybergen, and then the farthest house back on the Glidden property. And the delta, the change, further distance to the first house on the Marybergen property, again, is probably like another 100 feet. So I feel like we're sort of splitting hairs, if you will, in situations that are very similar. And I don't think that this sets a precedent for all future sewer connections. I think that it's to this immediate area. And one of the things that the data that Mrs. Glidden provided was, the estimate of cost for that connection. It was of sort of a similar magnitude. And she still has to do one of the connections. While it won't be as much, it's still going to be, burdensome to her, and much more than a connection that is, even talking about hundreds of feet and putting in pump chambers, in this particular property. I don't think the situation and the circumstances are that materially different from next door to deny her the ability. And I don't think that you're going to see this open floodgates of lots of folks coming in trying to make the same situation, because I believe that a lot of folks aren't going to want to agree to the same sets of terms and conditions that you've imposed. There's a real check and balance, I think, in the way that you structured your last approval. It wasn't just okay, it's as long as you don't do anything else, there's no other permits granted, there's no selling of the property. This is just to sort of maintain a status quo. That it really just seems fair. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well,
James,
I still think if someone has the same circumstances that she has, comes in here, they don't have a back house, but they have the same circumstances, exactly the same as hers, right? And you give her the variance, they're gonna say, I want a variance.
okay. Melissa, your thought?
I see that, but I'm actually compelled to think otherwise and agree with Mr. Gasparo and Ms. Glidden. I think the conditions that she's proposed, that, any of those events would trigger the requirement for a connection and a full connection for all of the units, not just cherry picking one or the other. I would be in support of giving her this variance. I'm also really compelled by the fact that we granted it to Mr. Meerberg, and I'm playing with the mapping on the GIS, and I understand, it could be a matter of maybe even 50 feet or so if we stood out there to figure it out. And I think it's a like circumstance. I think the variances she's proposed are more than fair. And she's demonstrated that the systems are healthy and that her water quality is not compromised. So I'm convinced that it meets the conditions.
Well, I could probably agree with both of you in some degree. I'm concerned. I'm one who has, for the last 12 years on this board, pushed for sewer. I think maybe we need to go back and look at some of our regulations. Board of Health I served on 25, 30 years ago. And the sewer commission at the time, there was exceptions for certain length of piping, if there were pumps, et cetera. And we just kind of have a blanket thing that you must hook up. And I agree with Mrs. Glidden that people are being forced up to hook up in situations where all of a sudden a housing development appears or a sewer appears, and they really have had no say or in that decision. But it is the rule, and I always say we start breaking the rules, I'm going to be with Jim that we're getting into trouble. So after debating with myself and thinking about it, I would go with granting the variance with all the exceptions, because that doesn't set a precedent in my mind, because the next person is not going to, I think, necessarily say that, and I'm not sure where that would be. That's my thought.
So then I will make a motion to approve the variance with the conditions proposed by Mrs. Glidden. I don't have them in front of me, but I'm not sure what exactly they were for the Muirberg property.
As proposed by the Muirberg property and in her application.
Yes, thank you. That would be my motion.
Do I hear a second? I don't hear a second. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye, and you're against. 2-1. That's difficult.
That was a difficult one.
Variance for 316 Nantucket Road.
And I believe, is the engineer here for today? 316? So,
That's what it
yeah,
says.
Don Brock.
I can read that at least.
Yeah, no.
You are right.
Yes. It just kind of
Yeah.
caught me off guard on
Well,
that one.
Again, this would be maximum fees compliance. He's looking for relief from the 150-foot well setback. His property, 316 is going to connect to town water. And he needs some sideline setbacks. He'll meet Title V, but he needs relief from our local regulations in Nantucket that require 50-foot setbacks. It's maximum feasible compliance. It's an innovative alternative septic system. And it is the best situation that we can get, and staff would recommend granting the variances.
Comments from the board?
Good.
Do your motion?
Motion to approve the variance for six.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye. The variance for 316 Nantucket Road is approved. Condemnation of 46 Center Street.
Yes, so this is 46 Center Street. I believe Mr. Merberg is here representing the property owner. This was a property that when the plumbing and the electricity was pulled, the property becomes uninhabitable. So we needed to do an emergency condemnation, and we're here to ratify it. Mr. Merberg.
Good afternoon, members of the board. James Merberg. I appear for Emma LLC, which is the owner of this property. I've had a chance to talk with Artel. Apparently, for a period of time, Emma LLC, which is still owned by a 90-year-old woman who lives in New York, was just left in some form of disrepair. There are three things that were troubling to the health department. The first was a sewer connection, which has been repaired by Mark O'Banion. I spoke with Mr. O'Banion yesterday. It's my understanding that you just did a repair. There wasn't a permit taken because it was only a repair. And I believe that at one point the health department has inspected it. It may require further inspection from the plumbing inspector, but it will pass inspection according to Mark O'Banion. It was just a repair. The second issue had to do with a tenant who had strung a series of lights and made some electrical connections which were not up to code. They are currently being repaired by a gentleman by the name of Mark Morelli, being supervised by a gentleman who is here today as well, Chris. I want to say Castle. I want to say his name correctly, but he's in the back of the room. I don't think you need to hear from him, but he is here. The electrical repairs will be completed probably within 7 days. The other issue had to do with the fire system. I spoke directly with, you probably need my glasses here, but with Joe Townsend. And we've made arrangements through Wayne Alarm to come over and do the inspection next Tuesday, which is their earliest date. We've made arrangements to have them do an assessment and then do whatever repairs are required. The only issue is there's no power in the building yet, so we need to have the electric finished first, after which they will then decide what equipment is needed in there and make it in compliance. The reason I came today is because MLLC is actually being spoken for by Vanessa Noel, who is the daughter of Emma Ginley, who is the beneficiary of MLLC. And they wanted the board to know that they are going to do everything they need to do to make it into compliance and do it as quickly as they can. There was a tenant there. There were a number of other issues which are unimportant, but as owners of the building, they intend to make all the remedial repairs as quick as they can. The only thing I'm asking the board to do today is, rather than ratify the condemnation, just give us a week or two so we can come back and report that everything is done. And as I understand it, at that point, the building would then no longer be condemned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roberto, Art?
Usually how we handle this is we have the emergency condemnation in the field and then we ratify the emergency condemnation. We can always lift that in
Yes.
the field and then ratify the lifting. So there is no delay to re-occupy the building so that nobody has a compliant building that has to wait for the Board of Health.
No, that's the way we've done it before.
Correct.
And I don't want to lift anything until we know it's actually done.
That's usually,
And
the
you
way-
can do that in the field.
and that's what we usually
Yeah.
do in the field. We did it just actually, it was in the last meeting with the Essex Road property. We did exactly that. We
Right.
condemned it in the field, lifted the ratified here about a year and a half ago. And then it was lifted in the field and you ratified the lift last meeting.
Would that be done without a hearing if that's the process?
That can be done without a hearing. Yes.
Real quick, we're happy all this work's being taking place. We'll drop everything to get there once the life safety issues are taken care of and take care of the, emergency condemnation order and then, at the next meeting, ratify the removal with you, but they'll be able to occupy it as
Correct.
Roberto
Right.
said. But
It's what we
right now,
usually-
the life safety issues that are currently being worked on, I think they probably should be completed before we lift.
Oh,
those
absolutely.
things.
And we agree with that. That's fine.
Okay.
That's acceptable as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the
Thank you,
board?
Nope.
I'll make a motion to ratify the condemnation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman says aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Ratified.
the attention to that building. It's a
Thank you very
gem.
much for your help as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay.
Now, the review of the swimming pool. Wow. As you recall, back in the fall at some time, we had a little issue about swimming pool safety, and this subject sort of slipped up. And I've been doing a little research on this. I said I would look into the environmental impact of swimming pools. Now, some people have questioned why the Board of Health is doing this. The state mandate of the Board of Health actually also includes environmental protection. But on this island, we do have COMCOM that does a lot of this and actually approves swimming pools. I tried to go and do this and only review peer-reviewed scientific literature. And that was almost impossible, because the only literature available is on Arizona, New Mexico, and areas of the country that are very hot, where their swimming pools run all year. The water evaporates, they have water shortage. So I tried to adapt what I learned to Nantucket the best I could. Also, the internet, of course, is full of science, but you have to kind of look at that carefully. So basically, at the time I started this, believe it or not, back in November, there were 975 pools on the island. It's probably closer to 1,000 at this point. And the real three issues that one has to deal with is uses of water, the chemicals, obviously, in the pool, and then enormous amounts of electrical consumption from the pumps. And it's The water issue on this island, at least for now, is not an issue, although I remember a couple of weeks ago in the paper, it said the water usage was up to like for 70,000 people or something incredible number like that. So it's not an issue right now. The electrical issue is actually quite interesting because while we may be burning a lot of electricity on Nantucket, all that electricity elsewhere is perhaps creating a lot of greenhouse gases. And we don't seem to be able to get our heads together about having some renewable energy on this island. We do have a potential of a third cable coming that will be expensive. So energy consumption is important. There will be a regulation from the EPA on July 18th that requires that all pools installed have a high efficiency pump system. That will be a national requirement. Looking around and talking as most I can with people on the island, most of the pools on this island have been installed that way. So I found a model, and you know how I feel about models. They're very good, except it's very hard to get the right information in it. So I put some information in the best I could because I had to determine what's the average size swimming pool on the island, how long is it on, how many months a year it goes on. I used 4 months. I got two numbers that the average pool was 10,000. I got another number, the average pool was 19,000. So I sort of did both and had some kind of range in between the two. And it's true that there'll be a significant amount of CO2 saved and a lot of electricity saved if pools had efficient energy pumps. I ran it the other way, and I don't really want to present it because I'm not sure how good the data is. But if I looked at, even if we say 1,000 pools on this island all had efficient pumps, ran for 4 months, they would still generate hundreds and thousands of kilowatt hours of electricity. And I'll get to that in a minute. The chemical aspect, wow, there are a lot of wonderful things that come in swimming pools, not just chlorine, particularly inside pools. And that's a whole other subject. I'm not sure I'll go inside an inside pool again, but in events outside, it's very different. Most pools actually aren't drained that much or drained very little. There are no regulations on this island, particularly, although the ComCom has them as such. When people put in their pools, they agree to certain conditions of drainage. So if the pool's drained correctly, it's really not a big deal. I guess what my concern is, and I can't figure this out yet, if we have 1,000 pools, we have an awful lot of electricity being consumed, even with efficient pumps. We have 1,000 little pools out there of man-made toxic chemicals floating around. And we do at some point, as the population grows, there'll be some concern about water consumption. So I can't make an argument that an individual pool is particularly environmentally damaging to the island. The question to me is the cumulative effect of 1,000 pools. And I'm not quite sure what to deal with that and how to deal with it. And I think this is not necessarily an issue for this board, but I think the town needs to at least look at that. And we hear a lot about tipping points on this island. And at some point, 1,000 pools on this island will have some significant impact. And I have no idea how to calculate that. So I'll open the questions.
Not necessarily a question, but I guess a couple of comments. One, thank you for your time and your research into this. And another comment would be that I know of several properties that are using solar energy to run their pools. So that would be another factor that could maybe further disrupt the data a little bit. And I don't know if there's a way to track how many of them are running.
Well, you could. I mean, you could really do this correctly if you had a couple of interns with nothing to do and go through all the town records and actually figure out the size of the pools and go out and do that kind of research. I mean, someone said maybe at some point, all pools should have a little solar system. And that would just eliminate that possible problem. I mean, the three recommendations are things to consider, I said, and I'm sure this board will probably react to it, is that we should encourage more community pools, because in a sense that's potentially more environmentally friendly because you have less pools. Of course, the problem is we have a significant safety issue of community pools that we stumbled about. And we stumbled in trying to correct that. And
Yes.
I hope that's on your agenda, the safety issues.
So the safety issue is definitely on the agenda. We're definitely looking into it. I can't give you a timeline on
Yeah.
it because it's a little difficult. It's a difficult situation, just time-wise that we're working on. I'll introduce Lydia shortly because she's one of the reasons why we're having so much work to do. The PFAS issue. But what we're also running into is, and we have the safety issue of the public pools, but in the 1,000 private pools that we're talking about too, the biggest safety issue that we're environmental safety issue that we're running into is the drainage.
Right.
Proper drainage is the most important part, whether it's worse if you have a saltwater pool, but it's terrible if you have a regular pool.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about saltwater pools being more environmentally friendly. And intuitively, that makes sense. It's just kind of hard to find a confirmation of that. And there's some issues with saltwater pools.
So the theory behind it all is a saltwater pool is easier to maintain and it's easier to drain if drained properly. Because if you let it sit for the week like you're supposed to before you drain it, the salt eventually catalyzes and everything comes out and you're draining pure water. Nobody waits that long. People say, they stop using the pool on Friday, they drain it on Saturday, and they're draining pure salt water. It's the same thing with a freshwater pool. They're supposed to run it through dechlorination. They're supposed to run it through to remove all the other chemicals in it. Sometimes there are surfactants in it, also known as PFAS in some cases. And that gets drained straight into.
But how do we deal with that? This is a Board of Health issue, a COMCON issue,
It's
a town issue?
It's a town issue.
How do you, it's the old thing of what do you have, 2 inspectors and,
we'll soon to have 3.
and you have 1,000 pools. That's a
Exactly.
lot of pools.
It's a town issue because it's going to take a multifaceted approach here. One of them is when permitted, it needs to have a proper location to be able to drain it. Because right now there's in some of the pools, there's nowhere to drain it. So they're draining it onto the grass.
But that shouldn't
quickly
be
and-
permitted then.
Exactly. So we would have to have that standard in permitting, which falls under the plus department, zoning and all that. falls
Where's the
under
COMCON
plus.
come into this?
With Concom, it depends on when they discharge. If they're going to do surface discharge, they have to make sure it's not, they're protecting the wetlands, it doesn't do scouring, and it goes into a proper drainage system. From our perspective, from the health perspective, we need to make sure that the water that is being drained is properly dechlorinated, properly decontaminated. So it's multiple jurisdictions. If they're going to go into a stormwater drain, DPW or sewer is involved there too.
Right,
depending
it
on the
goes to the
type of drain.
sewer, the stormwater. There's a lot of issues going into either one of those.
Yeah, so it's multifaceted. So what last I had heard, there was a bylaw being worked on by Fuss and O'Neill through the DPW department. I can look into what the process is there. It's been a few years since they first started working on this. We did propose a water discharge bylaw in 2017, joint bylaw from Concom and Health, but we were told to wait because this DPW one is coming down the line. So I will check to see.
Yeah, I
where
would
that is.
strongly encourage those 3 organizations and maybe through the select board, because it's not like we're a little tiny island with a couple of pools around. We have 1,000. And if you look at the growth rate, it's exponential. And at some point, it's just going to be toxic.
And it's also, there are so many different types of pool equipment out there. Some pools are heated by propane, which is its own carbon footprint issue. Some of them are heated by solar, some are heated by electricity. Some are salt water, some are fresh water, some use carbon dioxide to do their decontamination. Others use cyanuric acid. It is across the board.
Right, and there's no standard regulations, town regulations, there's guidelines.
There are
and
guidelines, but no standard.
There's
regulation.
thousands,
Correct.
on the internet, there's thousands of guidelines. You don't
Correct.
have to rewrite them, you just have to.
Correct. There are obviously structural issues where contractors have to build it correctly, engineers have to design them correctly, but operation of it, there are guidelines, but no standard. That is actually, all our inspectors are certified pool operators for that very reason. We pay for that training so that they understand what they're looking at when they're out in the field as well.
The thing that worries me is also the safety of the people that are using these public and
Correct.
semi-public. And I'm really concerned about that. And I would like to see this brought up on the agenda sooner rather than later.
Yes. Yes,
That really concerns me, is the safety of the people that are using these things.
absolutely.
One other thought might be that this would be an outline of a good project to propose to WPI to help these boards,
Mm,
you
That
know,
would be good.
have
That's
a
a-
basis for a policy.
That's a great idea. I always
Great
hate to
idea.
say, form a task force or form a committee.
No,
'Cause
no, no.
because that usually,
No, I was thinking about putting the young minds on it.
yeah, I think that would be a wonderful.
So I don't know if there's a proposal we could help you work on, Roberto, that
Yeah,
would,
I'm actually writing that down right now.
I think that's the perfect, because it's a multi-factorial, multi-department,
mhm.
multi-everything.
Yeah, and there would
Mhm.
be perhaps regulations, bylaws from, health regulations, bylaws from the select board. It would seem like it would, you're right, be multifaceted.
I think there needs to be a reassessment of the whole thing with the proper regulations and bylaws. It doesn't take 2 years,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
If WPI comes in October, they could do something in October, and then that'd be great.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I don't think we ever actually quite thought about that. Probably because we were thinking
That's why
that,
you need fresh
Yeah.
blood once in a while.
it's
We
probably
always
because we
need
were
fresh
thinking
blood.
of the consultants doing it. And we just never thought about using WPI
Well,
because of that.
I will say that last night we had a conversation at the select board about the cell phone boxes on top of telephone wires. And we were talking about how many of them there are. And someone suggested that would be a great project for WPI. So I'm inspired by somebody else's WPI suggestion. They're the tip of my brain today.
Fair enough.
All right, so James we want to update a couple of meetings
Absolutely, absolutely.
on both the safety issue and some coordinated pool regulations.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, so okay,
I think we're at the PFAS intern.
PFAS in turn.
So what I would like to do is introduce Lydia Silber. Many of you might remember, actually, Malcolm, you might remember, Abigail Silber was our intern 6 years ago.
Yes.
This is Abigail's little sister, Lydia, who is now a master's degree student at Tufts University. She is helping us on the PFAS response on the town side. I know that we have two separate consultants. There's Weston Solutions, who's working with the airport. There is CDM Smith, who is working with the town in conjunction to tackle this large, very complex PFAS groundwater contamination issue. So far, Lydia has been already tremendous at helping us liaise with the action groups and work and coming out with, like you said, fresh perspective, fresh eyes. So Lydia, if you would like to move up to, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi.
Close. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't be
I'll get very
afraid.
close. Hi, my name is Lydia Silber, and as Roberto said, I am a Tufts master's student studying sustainable water management. I'm focused on the water, food, and energy track, so lots of public health, lots of engineering, lots of policy. And as Roberto said, I'm working on PFAS, mostly doing community engagement and a little bit of education here and there, as well as some research. That is what I'm up to. Do you all have any questions?
Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank
No-
you.
No questions yet.
Not yet.
So we're trying to convince Lydia to stay on Nantucket after she's done.
Twist my arm, stay on Nantucket.
So we're trying to see where things go.
Thank you. I do have a quick question about PFAS and this board. I do have the benefit of being on the select board and hearing updates, but this is such a large health issue in our community. And I know our focus has been so dedicated to COVID, which we haven't mentioned once. It's not even on the agenda to talk about, which is somewhat remarkable. But is that something that, you know, we should be getting sort of a standing update on what's happening? What's the best way for this board to be involved in this issue?
Yeah, we're going to have to start doing that. It is so complex, especially as the science is evolving on it. Everything from short chain perfluorinated compounds to the long chain ones, which is the one everyone knows, which is PFOA, which was Teflon, introduced as Teflon 80 years ago at this point. So it is actually a very difficult and complex situation. So it feels like the information changes every week. Lydia is working with us to help collate that information. She's working on a turf review, if you don't mind giving a quick update on that.
Yeah. I'm currently working on looking at the artificial turf situation that's going on. Honestly, mostly have found that things have been measured in parts per billion, where typically things are measured in parts per trillion. And so I'm kind of just working to convert all that back and see what we get. And
Billions to trillions.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
different. They're very
Sounds
different.
like a typical Nantucket.
Oh
problem.
yeah, it's good. But honestly, I'm kind of just working out what would happen if we were to convert all of that land to turf, just because after 8 to 10 years, you have to then strip it, throw it in a landfill. That
Mhm.
also poses a potential problem.
Mhm.
So just the entire life cycle of turf is
Mhm.
kind of what I'm looking at
Fascinating.
right this second.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
and it's interesting. It's what makes it so difficult is I asked Lydia to look into turf 2 weeks ago, I think, maybe 3 weeks ago. And since then, we have now found out about PFAS in cosmetics, PFAS in shampoo, PFAS. So it's ever evolving as it goes along. So it's our next COVID
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
really what it is. It's the
Mhm.
next year and a half to 15 years and a half worth of work. And sorry for Art Gasparo being here as well as the chair of the airport commission. It's going to be a lot of work as well for the airport and the town working together. It's very complex. And because we are going from the original review about a year and a half ago, because it was right before COVID started. When we were first thinking of PFAS, we were thinking of it as a point source contamination. And now as we learn more and how widespread it was and how many thousands of different types of PFAS molecules are out there, it's ubiquitous.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of where we are.
Mhm.
We definitely can't review it as a point source contamination anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. The Cannabis Advisory Committee is made up of some people appointed by the Board of Selectmen, but also there's a representative from the Planning Board, the Select Board, and the Board of Health. I have been that representative and I would like to retire. I don't know if there's anybody else that would like that position.
Well, I think there was a question, not to jump in, Jimmy, but I am the select board representative. And I guess the question was, could I serve as representative to both bodies?
That's actually a very good. That's actually a very good question. That's a town council question. Though.
Okay,
I think that would work.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not well, anyway, my suggestion would be that perhaps we postpone this nomination and see if
Yep.
I could serve in that function, and otherwise, if not, then we would have a fuller board.
Yeah, I
and a
would.
Volunteer.
I mean,
That works.
I will continue if the board has no other choices.
Well, just don't come next time and we'll appoint you.
That's, no, I mean, it's struggled through COVID. I think we
Yeah.
didn't meet for almost a whole year.
And I will also note that we did talk about this at the select board last night. This Cannabis Advisory Committee is set to meet through 2022 or until 2022, I think, or something like that. 2022 is an end date. And at that point, the select board will determine whether or not this committee needs to continue to
Right.
exist. And because we're functioning under 2 licenses in a rather healthy way, it's likely that this committee will not have to meet longer. So if I could function as a dual representative through this year, that may be just enough.
Perfect.
Okay. Request by inspector to allow more in-office approvals of septic repairs. Haven't we talked about this before?
We did. So what actually Art is here as well. There are specific things that we would like to do in office that is not, I don't know how to really explain it. That doesn't rise to the level of a public hearing. So from then we would like to be able to approve those in office if possible. Art, I think you have some specifics.
Yeah, in 2010, the board granted us some approvals to do variances on certain repairs, mostly due to Nantucket regulations. And, to stop the steady stream of minor variances that we're going to have to grant under maximum feasible compliance. I think we just want to reaffirm those with the board. At least 3 of you were part of, well, actually, I don't know, in 2010, no, I think it was under the selectmen at the time. So we just want to reaffirm what staff is doing in-house and that you're comfortable with it. But I think it'd be best with the full board and that we can actually put something in writing that you can see.
Right, I was going to suggest that. I'd like to know what I'm,
Yeah, so like
Approving.
next, and in the August meeting, we'll reaffirm that so that
That's fine.
everybody's on the same page and we need, and we're looking for a little guidance and clarity from you as well on some of it because it's not technical, but we just don't want to be making decisions and then add more people coming in there challenging those.
no,
Yeah,
that we don't.
Exactly.
Okay, that's it.
We'll
I just
come
have one question. I was wondering about the number of vaccinations we have on this island.
So actually, that number we have right now, we're having a clinic. And once this clinic is over, we should have passed the 20,000 vaccinations given, actually doses given, which is great.
So if you take the Bureau of Census statistics for the population of the island, we're 100% or more,
We should be 100% or more,
which,
but in reality, we're closer to we're about 60% if we're
yeah,
looking at that
we're
number.
not quite where we need to be.
Not quite where we need to be. But, from the epidemiological standpoint, you start seeing basic mitigation at around 50%.
Yeah.
And then when you throw in the political aspect of this particular illness, what we're running into is nationally is a really odd phenomenon where vaccinated people are interacting with usually only vaccinated people, and unvaccinated people by and large are interacting only with unvaccinated people. And most of the time at this point, there's not a lot of interaction between the two populations, which is very interesting. So what we're seeing is that in Massachusetts, the bulk of the cases in Massachusetts are because of breakthrough cases through variants, caused by variants, whereas the bulk of cases in other states, I will say, in some other states are happening. We're having major outbreaks among unvaccinated populations with both wild type COVID and the Delta variant.
Delta variant.
And we're also seeing some breakthrough in the Alpha variant as well, the UK. The good news is that even in all three of them, if there is a breakthrough case among a fully vaccinated person, we have still seen that the death rate is 0. So that's really good.
There was I think a couple issues ago, New England Journal had a nice article on the different variants. I'll send it to you.
Great, that'd be
There's a
excellent.
nice summary of the differences.
And we're monitoring. That's excellent because we're monitoring the CDC tracker, and what they're finding is that in the United States as a whole, since June 25th is the one that we looked at today. It says from June 25th to today, the predominant variant is Delta.
Delta, yes.
But in Massachusetts, it's not. It's Alpha. So, and we're still seeing wild type cases here that are not breakthrough. So there are people who were infected with a variant before they were infected with the
by
wild
the-
type.
yeah.
So it's a very Massachusetts, New England in general has a very different set of circumstances than we're seeing in the southeastern United States or in the southwestern
Well,
United States.
just take the census numbers and you can pride yourself in being
Yes.
almost 100% vaccinated.
I think they're using that same figures in like P-Town, right? They had like 114%
Correct.
vaccination. They're very excited about that.
Yeah.
Roberta made a comment at the select board last night. I think it bears repeating that should we see a spike in cases, the state will send a mobile testing unit to us,
Yes.
which I think is important to know.
But again, we have to explicitly ask for it.
Yeah.
They're not there. So I was actually just on a phone call right before I came here with the 6 health agents in Martha's Vineyard, and Mora and Tisbury saw 11 cases recently, just right in 2 days.
Mhm.
So they're seeing a little spike there too, all associated to the same group and the same point of infection,
Interesting.
but 11 cases nonetheless, 2 of which were breakthrough. So it goes back to the whole viral load conversation that we had, 10 months ago,
Mhm.
where if you're in a concentrated situation and you get exposed by a concentrated dose, you're not going to have the same infection as if you get a pass by. Somebody coughs in your face once, you can get it, but it might not be that strong of a dose. You're living with somebody who is consistently coughing in your face, the chances of you getting infected grow exponentially for every hour that you're with that person. And that's what we're running into. That's what we ran into in Provincetown, and that's what Mora just ran into in Tisbury, where these people are in concentrated settings.
Right.
And that's part of what this testing center is able to look at. They come down, they test everyone, they test all the exposures, and they try to get a handle on what type. It's like an epidemiology strike team
Mhm.
is really what it is.
Okay. Good. Any other comments from the board?
No, I'm happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Please go ahead.
So
Second.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
When you look at, there's the infectious disease epidemiology. That's subset